Welcome to A-Level Biology at DGGS. The teaching team is myself, Mr. Blair, with Mrs. Bartlett, who's the head of science, and Mrs. Fielding and Mrs. House. In this presentation I'm going to run through what the course entails, what the entry requirements are, what sort of careers does A-Level Biology lead to, and what attributes define the most successful A-Level Biology student. The course in general is very broad-ranging. I think it's important to say from the start that it's a course that encompasses the biology both of animals and of plants, although naturally there is quite a substantial focus on the human. In the previous A-level there were practical exams, but that's no longer the case. All the practical activities are integrated within the teaching of the theory course, and any testing of that practical knowledge is done in the exam at the end of the second year. And we provide, assuming the student has completed all the practical tasks required, something called a practical endorsement, which does not contribute to the grade. This is the basic outline of the course. As you can see, it comprises 6 modules. The first module is the practical module, and that comprises itself 12 sub-parts. You have to complete at least one practical within each of those 12 sub-parts. We quite frequently do more, however that takes place over the 2 years of the course. So in year 1 we complete Foundations in Biology, which looks at cells in detail, and module 3, Exchange and Transport, how substances move in plants and animals, and module 4, Biodiversity, the beginning of looking at ecology and the study of evolution and diseases of principally of animals, but also we touch on plants. In year 13 the course extends into communication, which is the study of nerves and hormones, also the way that muscles work, homeostasis and energy incorporates respiration and photosynthesis, and finally we teach quite detailed genetics, again with evolution but now from a genetic standpoint, and more about ecosystems in the world. I've mentioned the practical skills. We have to carry out at least 12, and we certainly do more practical activities over the 2 years. In these pictures you can see students who are carrying out a technique called electrophoresis, where they separate DNA which has been digested with restriction enzymes. All students are required to keep and maintain a laboratory notebook, and this is the basis for us giving them a practical endorsement. In these pictures you can see testing for sugars. It's important that you know that there is a substantial, though 10%, mathematical content in this course. The maths is not difficult maths. This is why we do ask for a level 6 or grade 6 in GCSE mathematics. But if you're a person who runs screaming from the room, if you hear someone asking you to calculate a percentage, then you might want to think twice. But certainly the mathematics is fairly basic. There is a big element of statistics within the ecology section, so you will have to carry out multi-step calculations and make conclusions based on statistical outcomes. Now, in order to give you a flavour of the level at which we work in A-level biology, which is distinct from GCSE, here's a graphic of a protein. This particular protein is called collagen. Now at GCSE you'll just know that there are proteins. You may know one or two specific ones like hemoglobin, but you certainly will not have studied the structure of proteins, so certainly the detail here is quite considerable. And in module 2 we look at biochemistry and the functions of biological molecules. Moving on to module 3, Exchange and Transport, I once again incorporate a graphic to show you the sort of level at which we work in A-level. This is the story of how carbon dioxide is transported in the blood. Whereas at GCSE, you just mentioned the idea of carbon dioxide diffusing into the blood without too much detail. At A-level, you can see that there's quite a bit of chemistry going on, and also some long names like carbonic anhydrase, and you will need to memorize these names, and you'll need to understand this chemistry and the further impact that this chemistry has on the way the body works. In Module 4, Biodiversity, Evolution and Disease, we study how organisms are biodiverse in many different ways, also how they're classified, and we introduce the idea of the phylogenetic tree of life, and this later links with our understanding of genetics. Module 5, Communication, Homeostasis and Energy, incorporates a whole section on the nervous system and a section on the hormonal system, and in fact it integrates the two in the study, for example, of the way the adrenal gland is controlled. We also study in some depth the biochemical pathways of photosynthesis and respiration, and this gives another opportunity to demonstrate the difference between the GCSE qualification and the A-level, because in GCSE you simply learn that respiration involves the reaction of glucose with oxygen to produce water and carbon dioxide, but you can see here in this graphic, which represents only one part of the respiratory pathway, that there's a good deal more detail, and every single thing on this diagram needs to be known, memorized and completely understood, and there are sections that are before this and there are sections that come after it of equal complexity. So a successful biology student is one who can comprehend complex systems and remember a great deal of information. In Module 6, Genetics, Evolution and Ecosystems, we study genetics in a great deal of detail. For example, the diagram shown here is how a bacterial chromosome is controlled. In other words, we move into the territory of how genes are switched on or off. I like to take the students out on educational visits and to various events. So you can expect there will be some modest costs, but I do always try to keep costs for parents as low as I possibly can. One example of a trip that we've made consistently for the last 10 years is to the University of Kent at Canterbury, and we've been hosted by Mr. Ian Brown, who you see here, and we visit the electron microscope, and in fact our students have had ample opportunity to operate this very expensive and very interesting machine. When we're there, we always see some other aspects of the work of the university. Last year, for example, we saw their confocal microscopy, and we had a very good presentation on some of their research work. I like to do field work, and a way to achieve this without going on an expensive week-long field course is to manage some days out of school. And I run 2 days normally in non-COVID times, one of them here at Samphire Ho, where we carry out 2 of the practical activities, one being running transects from the sea up onto the Samphire Ho itself, and another one doing a comparison of biodiversity between grazed and ungrazed land. The second day of our field work is to carry out sampling, further sampling techniques, but also look at conservation at the Wildwood at Canterbury, Herne Bay. This is just an excellent place, and they are able to organise for us that we can do small mammal trapping, and of course in a very humane way, in order to estimate populations of small mammals that are there. And I think it's very important that students can get out and do this practical work themselves. In addition to the laboratory work, the field work and the visits to universities, I like where possible to take students to conferences, and this for example was a visit to Biology in Action, and we met one of the speakers, who is Professor Lewis Darvell, and he is a specialist in astrobiology. You can see some of our students who met him and bought his book. We also like to invite external speakers into the school. This speaker is a consultant in the renal department of Canterbury Hospital, and she brought in a lot of gruesome needles and equipment from the dialysis machine and gave a good explanation to all our sixth form up in our library. We do carry out external speaker meetings over Teams when we're unable to have a speaker in person. Where possible, I like to encourage our students to engage with wider reading, and a really good opportunity to do that is to read this magazine, Biological Sciences Review, which is not over expensive. It's a £15 subscription for the year, but it contains material written very much with the A-level student in mind. So this brings us to the entry requirements for the A-level biology course here at DGGS. We're looking for at least a level 7 in GCSE biology, that's the triple science route, or alternatively a 7-7 in the combined science, and at least a level 6 or above in GCSE mathematics. If you happen to have a GCSE in statistics, that would be a big advantage, but it's certainly not required. There will be students who didn't achieve a 7 but still want to do the A-level. They perhaps got a grade 6, and if that's the case, then you can join the course. However, we would make sure that you joined our STEM Access course as your 3+ option, with which you may be familiar at DGGS. It's part of our personal enrichment pathway, and the STEM Access course is designed to support students from grade 6 so that they can access the A-level in an effective way. Thinking ahead about careers, well, biology is a really great subject and has a giving quite a broad knowledge base. It's recognised as being a demanding subject by universities, and within the topic, because of the data handling and analytical skills, it's particularly valued. People find it a satisfying subject simply because of such a broad range of knowledge and skills within it.